Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another early morning book review. And today I'm reviewing Into the Light by Kim Sa-ryang, first published in 1939. So I'll explain what the story is, how it reads, and why it still matters today in 2025. So the hook for this story is a simple but quite unsettling. What happens to your sense of self when survival depends on passing as something that you are not? The story follows a Korean teacher in Japan who goes by the Japanese name Minami, and his carefully managed life begins to crack when a troubled student exposes his Korean identity and forces him to face the cost of his disguise. So I'll try and show how the narration captures the pressure of discrimination, the psychology of the colonized mind, and the hard, troubling question of what honesty looks like under empire, with some brief notes on the available English translations. So today, hello, good morning. I'm Barry. This is Seoul Book Club. And yes, today I'm reviewing Into the Light. The Korean title is Beat Soke. And the writer is Kim Sa-ryang. And the original story, like I said, was published back in 1939. And there's actually two English translations of this story available. So you can find a translation by Jane Kim on the Literature Translation Institute of Korea website. That one was published in 2013. And then there's also another translation by Christopher D. Scott, which was published in 2014 as part of the Asia Publishers Library of Modern Korean Literature. And for some reason, I have all of this series of books, but this one has two covers for some reason, I noticed. And they're slightly different covers. I don't know why. Anyway, so so who was Kim Sa-ryang? Kim famously had a short and turbulent life that intersected with several significant historical events for Korea and the region in general. So I'll give you a little outline of his life and some of the key events that he experienced. So Kim Sa-ryang is actually the pen name of Kim Sa-ryang. And he used this throughout his short but celebrated and influential writing career. So Kim was born in Pyongyang in 1914, and Pyongyang is now obviously the capital of North Korea. And 1914 was a time when the Korean Peninsula was under Japanese colonization. And Kim is believed to have died young, sometime in his mid-30s. But he had a very eventful life, and it's worth outlining. So at the age of 16, he was expelled from school for protesting against Japanese colonization. A few years later, he went to Japan to study German literature at the Tokyo Imperial University. In 1939, he debuted with this story, so Into the Light, and it immediately won him some acclaim. A couple of years later, he was arrested for being a thought criminal. He fled back to Korea, where he would become a war correspondent for the Communist Korean People's Army. And although it's never been confirmed, it's believed he died on a battlefield in 1950 when he would have been around the age of 36. And he has left behind a lot of stories, a lot of journalism, but it's this debut story that's often seen as his most important work. So this is a writer who lived through events that shaped the history of Korea. And I've reviewed stories in the past that have had multiple translations. So think of things like Cho Chong-nei's The Land of the Banished or Chinatown by Oh Chong-hee. And usually when a story is sort of translated multiple times, it's an indication that it's a story regarded as making a significant contribution to Korean literature. So why is today's story so important? Into the Light tells the story of a Korean teacher living in Japan during a period when Koreans faced significant discrimination. The teacher's name is Nam, but he's called Minami by his Japanese students. So Nam, or Minami, passes for Japanese among his students and colleagues because he is fluent in Japanese and because everyone calls him by this Japanese-sounding name. So no one suspects that he's Korean, and as such, his life is somewhat easier than it might be for other Koreans at the time. He's more respected by his students, and his life in the community in general is just easier. However, he is, of course, very conflicted about this, feeling that perhaps he is a hypocrite. And then eventually he's outed as Korean by one of his students and has to confront his conflicted feelings about his ethnic identity. So it's well known that during the 1930s, Japan was attempting to exert greater control over its imperial subjects. This included suppressing the Korean language and shutting down Korean language newspapers. So, given this was the environment at the time, what happens to this Korean teacher when his identity is revealed? So, the teacher's story is bound up with that of one of his students, a young boy named Yamada. And this young boy appears to be fascinated by the teacher and follows him around. And it's eventually this boy who reveals the teacher's identity. He hears him speaking Korean one day and reveals the teacher's secret. Turns out this boy is also Korean. He has a Korean mother and a Japanese father. And we realize through the course of the story that he too is conflicted about his identity. At one point, he denies this reality, letting out an agonizing cry. Yamada shrieked, "You're wrong. My mom's not Korean. You're wrong. I'm not Korean. I'm not. Tell him, Mr. Minama." So what Kim does in this story is portray the effect of colonization on the individual. It reveals how identity is shaped by the external world and the internal psychological impact this can have. So this story has been translated at least twice in the past 10 years. So obviously, it's a story with some historical significance. Does it still have something to say to the modern reader? So it definitely does. So this is very much a story that taps into broader global and academic trends. This is a story about the colonized mind. At one point, the teacher is forced to confront this in himself. He says, "Instinctively, I scrambled to think of my usual array of excuses, but it was pointless. You hypocrite. You're at it again, I see," said a voice inside my head. "Now that you can't hold out much longer, you're starting to lose your nerve, aren't you?" And it's a very moving portrait of someone living under colonization. We see the effect it has and how it leads to a diminished life. The teacher laments at one point, "After all, whenever I've thought about being Korean in this country, I've had to build a wall around myself. Honestly, I'm sick and tired of this charade." So anyway, thank you for watching this review of Into the Light. If you've read it, let me know what you thought in the comments. And if you have any recommendations, please let me know in the comments too. And don't forget to like or subscribe and hit the button. And I will see you in the next review. Take care.